Alright, good morning guys. We are going to talk about solving rational equations, okay? There are two ways we're going to do this. One way, which is the one we're going to look at most today, is cross multiplying. And then another way is by eliminating the denominator. I want to take the same equation and show you the two different ways, okay? So you can see how it's done. These are obviously more simple examples than some of the ones we're going to look at like this. But just so you get an idea of what we're doing. Cross multiplying you've done before. You may have called it the butterfly method. I'm not sure. But when you have a fraction, one fraction equal to one other fraction, what you can do is multiply diagonally, cross multiply. So you would say 2 times 13, okay, equals 10 times x. And we know 2 times 13 is 26. So we get 26 equals 10x. So to solve this, to get x by itself, all we would do is divide both sides by 10. And you get x equals 2.6. Okay? This is cross multiplying. The other way would be to eliminate the denominator. So what you would do is you would need to find the LCD, okay, for both denominators. So LCD for x and a 13, the only way to make them multiply to be the same would actually be to multiply them both, 13 and x as my LCD. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna multiply this whole thing, both sides, by the 13x, okay? Because what that does, when I multiply, really you're multiplying both sides by 13x. So when you multiply this side by 13x, what happens is the x's cancel and you get 2 times 13, which is 26. Or just like we read out of here, you would have 2 times 13. And then when you multiply this side by a 13x, your 13's cancel, leaving you just at 10 times x. And same thing, you would divide both sides by 10 and get x equals 2.6. Okay, both essentially do the same, okay? The way that seems to be easiest, because when you have an x and a 3x minus 1, your LCD is going to be x times 3x minus 1. It's going to be a lot more work in a way. So really when we just have fraction equals fraction, we're just going to do our cross multiplying, okay? We'll get to this method and when this way is easiest towards the end, okay? So let's look at example 2. All right, so I kind of already told y'all the answer to this, but are we going to cross multiply or eliminate the denominator? The easiest way seems to be cross multiply. That's the way y'all have done before. That's what you're most comfortable with. So that's what we're going to stick to when we can, when we have a fraction equals another fraction, okay? So I'm going to cross multiply, which means I'm going to have 2 times 3x minus 1 equals 5 times x, which is just 5x. And now I'm going to distribute. So 2 times 3x is 6x. 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2 equals 5x. So I would do a minus 6x from both sides to bring my x's over here with this x that was by itself. And then we need to go back and divide by a negative 1 to get a positive x would equal a positive 2. Okay, and we can check our answer. Let's look. Okay, so this is the equation I'm checking, okay? What I did is I went to Desmos.com and I typed in this half, the 2 times 3x minus 1, and I typed in this half, 5x, okay? So on Desmos.com, I typed in both halves of the equation and I've graphed them, okay? What you want to do is go over to your graphed functions. You want to tap on them so that the intersection point shows up. The x value of your intersection point, that is your answer. Okay, so our x value where they intersect is 2. And we got that our answer for this was 2, so we're good. All right, we have fraction equals fraction. So once again, we're just gonna cross multiply. So we get 10 times n minus 9 equals 4 times n plus 8. All right, and now we're going to distribute this 10 to everything inside. So 10 times n is a 10n. 10 times a negative 9 is a negative 90. My lead keeps breaking, sorry guys. So negative 90. 4 times n is 4n, and 4 times 8 is a plus 32. Okay, so I'm going to do minus 4n on both sides to get my n's together on one side. So 6n minus 90 equals 32. Then I'm going to go plus 90 to both sides. So I get 6n equals 122. I'm going to divide both sides by 6. Okay, and I get n equals, this is going to come out to be 20.3 approximately. We're going to round it to 20.3. That would be your answer. Okay, for this one we're typing in this half and this half. So I've typed them both in. Notice I used x instead of n. Okay, you want to do the same if you have one where the variable is not x. I had to zoom out a lot more for this one, so I'm just going to click my functions. Their intersection point shows up, and the x value is 20.3, which is what we have. And we're going to do one more with cross multiplication down below. Okay, so example 4, we're going to solve this one as well. So I'm going to cross multiply. The reason I'm cross multiplying is I have fraction equal to fraction. Okay, so cross multiplying. Negative 2 times x plus 1 equals, and then we're going to cross multiply the other way. So here I'm going to have x minus 8 times x minus 1. Notice I'm keeping the expressions, the things with more than one term, like these binomials, I'm keeping them in parentheses, okay? Because I'm multiplying negative 2 by this whole thing, okay? So I had to keep this whole thing in parentheses. Then I'm multiplying this whole thing times this whole thing, so I had to keep them in parentheses, right? So I'm going to go ahead and distribute. Negative 2 times x is a negative 2x. Negative 2 times 1 is a negative 2. And then with this one, I have a binomial times a binomial. Hopefully y'all remember when we multiplied these using our x box. So I'd have x minus 8 times x minus 1. X times x gives us x squared. Negative 8 times x is a negative 8x. X times negative 1 is a negative x. And negative 8 times a negative 1 is a positive 8. With like terms right here. So we have an x squared. Then we have negative 8x minus 1x is a negative 9x, and then a plus 8. All right, this one does require a little more work. I am going to show you how we would work it out. If you are stuck on ones like this, you can use Desmos to help you. The way we're doing it to check our answers, you can actually do it to get your answer, and I'll show you that in a minute. But we could also solve this one. Okay, so what we would want to do, since we have an x squared, is we want to, ax squared plus bx plus c, we want to get it in this format, okay? So I'd want to do a plus 2x and a plus 2 on both sides to make this left side be 0. 0 equals x squared minus 7x plus 10, okay? Now we have our trinomial, okay, of our quadratic, so we are going to factor that using our x box. So a times c, 1 times 10 is 10, my b is negative 7, okay. In order to multiply and be positive but add to be negative, both sides would have to be negatives. And the ones that add up to be negative 7 is negative 2 and negative 5. So we get 0 equals x minus 2 times x minus 5. Okay, and then we set both of these equal to 0 and solve. So x minus 2 equals 0. There it's really just changing signs. So we get x equals a positive 2. And x minus 5 equals 0. And we get x equals a positive 5. Okay, so those would be our two answers. Alright, so we got 2 and 5 as our answers for this one, so I'm typing in this left side of my equation and this right side of my equation into Desmos. Okay, so I have it typed in. It's graphed over here. Okay, so I'm going to click on one of the functions to see my intersection points. The x values are 2 and 5, like our answers. Alright, these examples are different, okay? Because I don't just have fraction equals fraction. I have a fraction plus another fraction equals a fraction, okay? So in this case, what we're going to want to do is find our least common denominator, okay? And we're going to do the method where we eliminate the denominator, okay? So I'm going to find my LCD. So I already know there's nothing I can multiply 3 by to make it be an x plus 6. I can't make these the same, so I am going to have to put that x plus 6 in my LCD, okay? But I also need a number that I can make 3 and 9 work with. So I'm going to see what is my least common denominator for 3 and 9. Well, if I'm listing out the multiples of 3, I end up getting to 9, okay, which means my least common denominator is going to be 9 times x plus 6, okay? So what I'm doing, I'm really multiplying this whole thing by 9 times x plus 6. This would be your answer when I'm asking what would you multiply the entire rational equation by to eliminate the denominator. What's your LCD? This would be my LCD, right? But we're about to do an example like this down below, so I want to kind of show you one more brief example up above. So what we're doing is multiplying the whole thing by this. So I'm going to multiply each fraction by the LCD, okay? And what happens when I do that here is my x plus 6 would cancel with my x plus 6, leaving this to be 36, because 4 times 9 is 36. Then I'm multiplying this one by 9 times x plus 6. Okay, well, the 3 would simplify with the 9. Okay, so you would have 2 times 3, which is 6, times your x plus 6. And then here, times 9 times x plus 6, your 9's would cancel, leaving you 8 times x plus 6. Okay, and then from there we would distribute and we would solve. We're going to apply that down here. Okay, so to start, I first need to figure out my LCD. Okay, so I have an x plus 5, an x minus 5, and an x squared minus 25. So I would want to factor this, okay? When I have two terms, and one is an x squared minus, and I know the square root of that number, this is difference of squares. If you remember, difference of squares means you take the square root of both of those terms, because you know the square root of both, and you get an x, and you get a 5. So we are going to rewrite this to be x minus 5 and x plus 5, which works out perfectly because we have an x plus 5 and an x minus 5 here, which means my LCD is going to be x minus 5 times x plus 5. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything by my LCD times x plus 5 is times and x minus 5. It doesn't matter the order. I put x minus 5 and x plus 5 here and I switched it here. It's okay. What you're doing is multiplying each one by that. So times x plus 5, x minus 5. I'm going to do a dot instead of the x for multiply so that you don't think that's an actual x. All right, so x minus 5 on bottom and x minus 5 on top. X plus 5 on bottom and x plus 5 on top cancel, leaving us 4 times x minus 5. And then I'm going to multiply this fraction by our LCD as well. Okay, so then now our x minus 5's cancel. Leave us minus a 3 times x plus 5. And then here, if I multiply by x plus 5 and x minus 5, x minus 5's cancel and x pluses cancel, leaving you just an equals 4. Okay. So then we're going to distribute our 4. So we get 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Negative 3 times x is a negative 3x. Negative 3 times 5 is a negative 15 equals 4. Now I'm just combining all the terms that are like each other on this left side. So a 4x and a negative 3x will just be 1x. A negative 20 minus 15 would be a negative 35 equals 4. We'd add 35 to both sides. And we get x equals 39. Alright, last but not least, we want x to equal 39. So I'm going to type in this half and this half. Since this one is just one number 4, what we have to do is set y equal to 4, okay? Just like I have here, okay? If you just put 4, nothing shows up. Okay, so you want to put y equals 4 so that it makes that horizontal line at y is 4. You have these two linear functions, tap right there, and we see their intersection point. Our x value is 39.